Okay, and welcome to a section about functions, which is basically a set of instructions that we can write and reuse over and over in code. Now, functions in JavaScript and pretty much every other language are key building blocks. It means we can write code to carry out a task once and reuse it over and over. And we don't need to know how that code works behind the scenes. We can just tell it, hey, I want to go and carry out this task, and it will do that. So it might be, display someone's name in full, and we run that function, and behind the scenes it goes and finds off the person's first name, middle name, and last name, joins them together, and then prints that out or gives us the answer. Or we could find like the area of a rectangle, and we can give it 2 bits of information, height and width, and it will carry it out and then give us the area. So the little example that's running through here with a function, we give a function some input. Behind the scenes, inside that black box, we don't need to know how it works. It carries it out and then prints out the result, the output. Because we could manually, like in this example, store 6 different variables, with 1, height 1, with 2, height 2, with 3. But that process is being repeated over and over. So it's a way of actually getting rid of repetitive code. Makes our code more efficient, easier to maintain. And we've got a keyword called function. And then we have an identifier, the name of the function, set of brackets, and then a curly brackets, like a code block, and all the stuff between that code, those curly brackets, is the instructions that this function will carry out. We've actually seen a function before using the log function, which gets us to print out some information on the screen, but we haven't actually needed to worry about how that actually works behind the scenes. We just need to know that it does. So we're going to write a function that prints the remainder to the console, and this function is going to be called getRemainder. So we're going to create a function called getRemainder, and let's run that and see what happens. Reminder. getRemainder helps if I actually read the question properly. Okay. Let's actually go and check our spelling again. Run that, there we go. In the function body, so inside the curly brackets, once again I'm going to tab in so it's indented so it's a bit easier to read. I want to add to log to the console, water the plants. So I'm going to use console.log. Water the plants. And I want another function that's going to be greet in Spanish. So using the function keyword, greet in Spanish. So I've got an empty function here that doesn't actually do anything. And Buenos tardes. Apologies for my mispronunciations. And it's gone and printed out those. Now note, it hasn't actually printed out any output yet because we haven't actually run these functions at all. These are just templates that we can use. So we need to actually do what's called calling a function, or running it, or executing it. So to do that, we just give it the function name with the brackets after it. And that's a function call, so it goes and runs it. So when I just type in, say, get greeting, it goes and often runs this function. Yeah. Note, with JavaScript, we've got to write the functions in order because it loads 1, 2, 3, loads the code in order, and it gets to get greeting and then goes off and does this. So we need to make sure that this function call occurs after that get greeting. So we're managing an online store. Customer places an order, we want to send them a thank you note. So we're going to have a function that basically will send out that function, that thank you. So we're going to make a function call, and it's going to be called say thanks. So we've got say thanks, and it's going to have thank you for your purchase. So let's take that, put it in there. Let's tidy this up a little bit. Okay, so I've got a function call here, or function. Now I'm actually going to run it. So let's see what happens if I put that function call on line 1. Actually, okay, so it's done it, but it shouldn't have actually done it, so it should actually happen afterwards. So we've got our say thanks, and it runs it. Now we want to say thanks 3 times, and I can run that, and it does that 3 times over. Later on, when we look at loops and iteration, we'll get a way to actually reduce that so it can run X number of times for us. Now parameters. Parameters and arguments, these are things which go inside these little bits of brackets. So if we were, say, calculating the area of a rectangle, the parameters or arguments we need to give the width and the height. And then we can calculate the area and print it out. So whatever goes inside these set of brackets are our parameters, and they're separated by a comma, and we give them a variable name. So the say thanks function, it works pretty well at the moment, but we want to make it more personal, so we're going to add a variable called name, or parameter called name. I'm just going to put that in there. So I've got a variable called name here, but I haven't actually done anything with it here. I want to modify that message so that it prints it out. Thank you for your purchase, and we're going to put something in here. So we can do this a few different ways. So we could do like they've shown here, or I'm actually going to modify it. So I'm going to change that to use the interpolation, and we're going to use $ curly bracket name. Now, once again, we're not getting any output because we haven't actually called that function yet. And let's go and run it. And let's say thanks to, in this example, Cole. So thank you for your purchase, Cole. And if we want to actually do that for a different person, we can do that. Nice and easy. Okay, new versions, we've added in default parameters. So these are predetermined options. So it'll basically, use something by default if we don't actually give it. So if we don't send an item 1, an item 2, or an item 3, it will let us use a default option. So if we look at this one, function greeting, so we've got the name of the function. Name is assigned to stranger. So if we haven't given a default name, it's going to use stranger. But if we say greeting Nick, it will print Nick, and it will ignore that stranger bit. So let's have a look at how we go. So what we're going to do, we've got a shopping list. So change the make a grocery list. Okay, so we've got item 1, item 2, item 3. We always purchase milk, bread, and eggs every time. So we're going to assign default values to each of these. So item 1 is going to be milk as its default value. Item 2 is going to be bread. And item 3 is going to be eggs. Cool. Now, we haven't actually done anything with that. So let's actually just have a look at example. So let's actually run it. And because we didn't give any information, but let's try it with replacing that first option. Let's get some steak. So the first option has been overwritten with steak. Okay, return function, or the return keyword or command of a function. Basically, return a value. So give us a value that we can use later on. Now, by the default, it doesn't return one. It has undefined. So we need to use this keyword called return. So return the answer that we can then reuse in some other point of code. So this example here, function is calculating the area of a rectangle, and it does that, but it doesn't do anything with it. So when we try and run this, it prints undefined because it hasn't returned or turned this into an answer. That's where we need this return area command. So let's look at this example here. So width and height. So if width is less than 0 or height is less than 0, it tells us it's going to return you need to put positive integers in. Otherwise, it will actually calculate the area. So we need to order monitors for everyone in an office and got a nice grid. So straight lines. And we need to calculate the number of monitors needed. Two parameters, rows and columns. So let's create this function. So let's do that to start with. And it needs two parameters, rows and columns. Good, that's done. And we need to multiply these. So we need to work out the return that answer. Another function divide, we can calculate them. So we're going to actually call this function. And we're going to say 5 rows and 4 columns. Oh, okay. And we're going to make a variable called number of monitors. So we've got that, and let's overwrite that. Num of is assigned to whatever answer we get. Or is it wanting us to do that on one row? Okay, wants a constant. That's what it was. Because it's always going to be the same number of monitors. So set that up. And we're going to log that to the screen. And we've got 20. Good. Okay, helper functions. So let's have a look at these. So helper function is basically a function inside another function. So converting Fahrenheit to Celsius. So what we've got is a little function here multiplied by 9/5. So it takes a number and times it by 9 divided by 5. So essentially, we've got a function that carries out that calculation and we can reuse it over and over. So we get the temperature in Celsius, times it by 9/5 and then add 32 onto it. So it basically is inside a function telling it to go and run another function. Gets a little bit sort of confusing, but this is only because this one here is quite simple. It's only like one line of code, but imagine if you had 50 lines of code here. it'll make it a lot easier to understand this. So we're going to read through those, and then read through that, see how it explains the different examples. So we've got a function for the monitor count, and we're going to have another function called cost of monitors. So we've got our function cost of monitors. It takes two parameters, rows and columns as well, same as before. And we're going to leave that empty for now. And we're going to return a statement as the value of those multiplied by 200. So we're going to return monitor count, and we're going to give it those parameters, the rows and columns, and times 200, because that's our price of each monitor. And we're going to save that cost to a variable. And it's going to be a constant. Don't know why we really wanted to use a constant here. And we're going to run the cost of monitors function. And we're going to give it the 5 and 4 like we've used in these other examples. And then we're going to log it. Good. Okay, function expressions, so we can get it to carry out the work as we go. So we can define the function inside an expression. So this is sort of a bunch of shorthand. So we've got a constant, calculate area, and we make a function which takes the width and height, and so on. So we declare a variable to make the variable's name be the name or identifier of your function. And common practice is that we use the constant variable. And then we just write the name of the variable in which the function is stored, and then followed by the... Okay, so the key thing with these is that they have to be written in order. So you can't sort of run them before you've actually created the function definition. So it means I've got to write it line 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've got to write it on line 1 and 2, and then say if I want to use it, it's got to be on a line after that. It can't be try and use it on line 1 when I don't actually write about it until line 4 or 5. So we need to water a plant once a week on Wednesdays, and define a function to help us check the day of the week that the plant needs to be watered. Create a variable, plants need water, using the constant variable, plant needs water, and an anonymous function that takes a parameter of day. So I'm just going to call it function, so it hasn't got a name on it. And then I'm going to give it, it's going to take a parameter called day. Okay, now we need to add some code in here. So we're going to use a conditional, so an if statement. So if day is equal to Wednesday, we're going to return true. And then anything else is going to be false. And we're going to run it like plant needs water. Plant needs water Tuesday. And log that to the console. See what happens, and we've got false. So it doesn't need it on the state. Okay, arrow functions, let's have a look at these. Okay, these are basically ways of sort of running functions as shorthand. So rather than having to write the word function, we can actually just modify it. So we just have the arrow and then the instructions. So we're going to modify this, so we don't need that function there, but we're just going to put equals greater than. I would suggest just find one that you find most useful to use and stick with it. Okay, and now we can compress these down onto sort of one line or so on. So multi-line blocks, single line blocks. So we've got a function, yeah, on one line. We can actually, if it's on a single line, we don't need to put those curly brackets. So it's just basically ways of having shorthand. So we're going to refactor this one, so it's all single line. Does it still need the return keyword? No, we don't need that return keyword, so let's get rid of this. Today is Wednesday, bracket true or false. Ooh. What have we done there? Oh, I think we just need to get rid of that last curly bracket. Oh, and get rid of the parentheses around the word day as well. Cool. And there's this one done. Functions, really, really useful. Have a go just experimenting, trying out a few different ones. You can just make it like a web page or experiment in here to see how that all works.